This creature is said to have been reported for hundreds of years around the world. And here in North America, no different. Even down here in the Appalachians. Now, some of these places in these mountains and these Appalachians is so remote, so rugged, that anything could be hidden if it don't want to be seen. Now, these mighty creatures, they go by the name of Bigfoot, Sasquatch, skunk ape, just to name a few. There's so many names. But here in the mountains, we call them boogers too. And they're called cryptids. What's a cryptid? Well, it's things that people knows is out there, but science is yet to prove that it exists. That's what a cryptid is. And these old stories go back, way back into the old times. Hundreds of years ago. Back in Europe, fighting wild men, giant people, just old folklore and legends. Now here's a map of the United States, Canada, North America, showing all the different sightings of Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whichever one you want to call them. And the most famous was back in 1969, the Patterson film. It showed one in North California walking through a creek basin. That was a nice picture right there. Now here in the Appalachians, this is the Appalachia region. All the mountains from Nova Scotia up there in Maine, all the way down Maine, all the way down to Alabama. And here's some wilderness country too. Now the Native Americans, they was here for thousands of years, thousands before any settlers ever come in this country. And they knowed every inch of it, and what was in it, how to hunt it. And they had, so many stories, their elders in these tribes, of all the stories of animals, things that went on, what they've seen, what they've witnessed. And they've witnessed this Bigfoot. They claim he was keeper of the forest. And the Cherokee name for him was Tuscaloosa. They knowed of his existence, and they just learned to share with him. They didn't bother him, they didn't bother them. And the settlers come in here in this wild wilderness country, hacking their way in, trying to make them a farm, live off the land, little places like this in the wilderness. And they begin to see some weird stuff here and there. These old stories of things in the wilderness and the woods, they didn't know what they was. Giants, monsters. There's even stories of Daniel Boone. When he was in Kentucky, he shot and killed one. They called him a Yahoo. And there's even a story of Davy Crockett on his way to the Alamo. He met one, and even the story that he talked to it. But that's another video. And they started logging in these old rough mountains, back in the deep mountains, bringing them big logs of timbers out as civilization moved in. And they reported seeing stuff like this. Now, this old country is so wild in places, so remote, that all you can do to get back in these places. But it's so beautiful. And another thing here, people always say, well, there ain't no such thing as a panther in these mountains. I've heard that time and time again. But there's so many stories of these panthers, people in these mountains seeing them. You tell me that they're lying. Old stories of times go by, of fighting them, saving their livestock, saving their own lives and their families. Stories. Here's some old newspaper clippings, old papers, old stories. So they got to be something to these stuff. Just all kinds of stories, story out of stories. These old panthers in these mountains. Of course, mountain people call them painters. That was just what they called them. But you can't tell me that there's no existence of that stuff. And back in these mountains, there's always reports from way back of feral people living in these mountains. These are not just homeless people, these are just feral people that wanted to live away from society. And they lived like this. Reports of this of all kinds. And even old stories of the Appalachia Trail, of people walking this trail from North Georgia all the way to Maine. Beautiful country. And they've experienced, and there's plenty of stories you can find on the internet. Old stories about this, walking this Appalachia Trail. Of some weird things. They claim there's stories of a wild man on this Appalachia Trail that would attack people. There's stories of all kinds of that. And in these old rugged Appalachians, you're liable to see anything at any time. But nobody would never believe you. Never believe you. Just happen to catch a glimpse of something that don't want to be seen. And all around the country, people will drive through and catch a glimpse here and there, and every once in a while get a picture of something. But it's always blurry. You don't really know. People deny anything. They're never going to admit anything. And all they find maybe in these remote places is a track where one of them left a big old footprint. Now they all can't be fake. They just can't be doing it. There's too many reports. And you get in these old mountains and you think, well, it's not that big. But you get off in these mountains, it's unforgiving and so vast. But it's so beautiful. You get in these old places and you hear stuff like this, like reports of wood beating on a tree way off in the distance, back in these old remote places, and sounds like this. That's something you'll never forget. Well, I ought to put the hair on the back of your neck standing up. And they say they've got special gifts, the Native Americans did, that they could be standing right there next to you and you'll never even know it. They're a mystical creature, that's for sure. And you get up in this old wild country, and it's so beautiful. Hear nature, the birds are singing, so peaceful. And there's things that don't want to be seen, won't be seen unless it wants to be. But when it gets dark, the mood changes in some places. And you get to playing tricks on you. And you'll see or hear something like this. Now, in these old Great Smoky Mountains, but it's got 15 million visitors a year coming in here. In these Smokies. And most just travel on through, see the sights, never leave the vehicle. And some walk off trail. And when they do, look how vast it is. Some of them never return. Now, there's still people missing in these Great Smoky Mountains, but the most famous and the most popular, let's put it that way, is Dennis Martin. He went missing in 1969 with his family up here in the mountains. They said it was feral people, reports and stories. Feral people carried him off. Even reports of Bigfoot grabbed him up and carried him off. But nobody knows for sure, but somebody knows the answer. So many stories. Now, I've been all through these mountains in my 60-something years of these mountains. Daniel Boone National Forest, Cherokee National Forest, Big South Fork, Cumberland, Clinch, Pine Mountain Range, Smoky Mountains. And I've never witnessed no Bigfoot by my eyes, but I have heard a lot of weird sounds and a lot of weird noises. But that don't mean nothing. And I know a lot of you all have seen and heard things too over the years. So how do you tell somebody that's been in the woods 60, 70 years of their life, raised in them, that they don't know what they're seeing, what they're looking at? So I just don't buy that. Too many witnesses counts. Now I'm going to share something with you. This is a site I'll leave a link to under the description. It's the BFRO, the Geological Database of Bigfoot Sightings and Reports. You probably ain't never heard of this, but I'll leave a link under the description. You can go to it. And what this site does, these are scientists that are really investigating Bigfoot research and reports. You go to this site, you could click on the United States there, on what state that you want. And then when that state comes up, it will show all the counties in that state. You could click on that county and it'll show all the reports over time from that county. It's pretty good. You really get a kick out of reading this if you don't know about it. So I thought I'd share that with you. I failed to mention another phenomenon of cryptids in this mountain. All these dogman sightings. This is a video in itself. There's just so much to cover on these cryptids. So many sightings over the years. And it's amazing how many sightings there are being reported. Now, since I was a little old bitty thing, I've been fascinated by reading stories of Bigfoots and sightings and all this stuff. But you know, the only way it's ever going to be proven is somebody just pulls up an old pickup truck, drops the tailgate, and there he lays. That's the only way. Now, these old mountains, there ain't nobody can tell me no different. There's things in these mountains that man don't know. He'll never know. Only the good Lord knows. And I just want to share these little stories with you. Now, you can look down through my playlist on my channel, The Strange and Unexplained. I've got all kinds of stories on the missing in the Smokies, Bigfoot, all these little stories, unexplained stories. Just search down through it and find the one you want. There's so much history and so many stories to be shared. So, you never know what's out there. You just never know. So I want to thank you all for watching. God bless, and I'll see you next time.